Hi, nice to see you again. I am Dr. Chengzi the Orange. Today I'll start talking about cancer. Cancer is one of the most common diseases in the world. It ranks as the second leading cause of death globally after cardiovascular diseases, with an estimated 20 million new cases diagnosed in 2022 and 9.7 million deaths. Approximately 1 in 5 people will develop cancer in their lifetime, and about 1 in 9 men and 1 in 12 women will die from the disease worldwide. In the United States alone, there are more than 70 National Cancer Institute (NCI)-designated cancer centers. If we include university laboratories, pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies, research institutes, hospital cancer centers, as well as prevention, rehabilitation, and epidemiology research institutions, there are around 1,500 cancer-related centers across the country. So if you hope to work in the biomedical field, cancer research is not only meaningful, it is also a highly active and promising area. Even though cancer is such an important disease, I had no real idea what cancer was until I was about 12 years old. My very first encounter with cancer came not from a textbook, but from a Japanese TV drama, The Red Suspicion, which aired in China in 1984. It was the first foreign TV series broadcast in China. At that time, only about 30% of families owned a television, most of them black and white, and only very wealthy households had color TVs. In the show, a 17-year-old beautiful and innocent girl, Sachiko Oshima, developed leukemia after accidental exposure to biochemical radiation in her father's research lab. She was given 1 year to live because leukemia was considered a terminal disease in the 1970s, not only in Japan, but worldwide. During that year, Sachiko fell in love with her half-brother, discovered her illegitimate status, attempted suicide several times, endured every treatment available at the time, and suffered repeated medical emergencies. In the end, she could not escape death, but she was surrounded by immense love and kindness from her lover, her parents, and everyone around her. The TV series hit China like a tsunami. Among a society that had been largely closed off from the outside world, it caused an extraordinary cultural sensation. Sachiko became the dream girl of every man, and her lover, Mitsuo Sagara, the dream boy of every woman. Sachiko's hairstyle became so popular that a barber was considered unprofessional if he didn't know how to cut Sachiko hair. From that TV show, what I learned was simple and terrifying. Leukemia equals terminal disease. In Chinese, leukemia was translated as white blood disease, essentially blood cancer. At that time, the only treatments were chemotherapy and blood or bone marrow transfusions. I still vividly remember the shock of seeing Sachiko lose all her hair after chemotherapy, and the image of her gums bleeding uncontrollably after something as simple as brushing her teeth. I also remember my secret hope, almost a prayer, that some medical miracle would happen and she would survive. Unfortunately, the director did not arrange a miracle for the audience. That story deeply imprinted the phrase terminal disease in my mind. Even years later, after I became a biomedical researcher, it took me a long time to truly accept that cancer is not necessarily terminal anymore. If Sachiko were a girl living in 2025, her story would be told very differently. Today, the overall 5-year relative survival rate for leukemia is about 67% across all types. For acute lymphocytic leukemia, the 5-year survival rate in children can be as high as 90%. If you are too young to know Sachiko, think about Walter White from Breaking Bad, 2008. Walter was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer, one of the most aggressive cancers. He survived almost 2 years and managed to make over $80 million before he died. Ironically, from bullets, not cancer. If this were the 1970s, Walter White might have had only 3 to 6 months, not nearly enough time to be Breaking Bad. It's almost funny, though in a dark way, that the Chinese government never missed an opportunity for propaganda in the 1980s. When everyone was talking about Sachiko, suddenly many similar stories appeared in newspapers and on TV. Most were about a top student, who unfortunately developed cancer yet wrote letters to encourage classmates from his hospital bed. Or a comrade, being a cancer patient, continued working until his last breath. I must admit, at 12 years old, I was extremely ignorant. I had no medical knowledge at all. What remained in my mind was a completely wrong but unforgettable impression. Good people are more likely to get cancer. Of course, my childish understanding of cancer was wrong. The cause of cancer is not being a good person. The cause of cancer is damage to cellular DNA, followed by a series of orchestrated events triggered by that damage. So, what can cause DNA damage? Many factors can contribute. Some are inherited genetic mutations passed down from our parents. Others come from the environment: tobacco smoke, air pollution, industrial chemicals, pesticides, and certain viruses, such as human papillomavirus, HPV, and hepatitis B and C viruses. Diet also plays a role. Excessive intake of pickled or salted foods, betel nut, or highly processed foods increases risk. Lifestyle factors such as smoking, excessive alcohol consumption, lack of exercise, obesity, and chronic inflammation all contribute as well. Aging itself is one of the strongest risk factors for cancer. There are far more cancer patients in the 21st century than in the 19th century. Not necessarily because modern life is more toxic, but because humans now live much longer. Living longer is a triumph of scientific progress, but cancer is in part a byproduct of longevity. DNA damage accumulates with age, while the body's ability to repair that damage gradually declines. Based on my own life experience, it almost felt intuitive that pollution must be a critical factor in cancer development. The city where I lived as a teenager was surrounded by rolling hills, and scattered among those hills were large industrial complexes, petrochemical refineries, thermal power plants, cement factories, and calcium carbide plants. Winters were always difficult because of air pollution, but conditions were especially harsh near the factories. The largest industry in our city was a massive petrochemical refinery, so large that it formed a self-contained community with 5,000 employees, 30,000 family members, its own schools, hospitals, residential areas, and water supply system. The community was well built, and refinery employees were noticeably wealthier than most other residents. Many young people dreamed of working there. In 1994, I visited the refinery community. I still remember my reaction. The air was pungent, almost unbearable. The closer we got to the center of the refinery, the stronger the smell became. I was told that ambitious employees who truly cared about promotion fought for positions in the very center of the plant, where exposure was highest, but career advancement was faster. My final stop was the domestic water supply system. From the top of a tall building, I looked down into a large elevated water tank, and the water inside was a disturbing shade of green. Even though the refinery had its own purification system, it was hard to imagine what kind of process could turn that greenish water into something drinkable. My friend, who grew up in the refinery community and served as my guide, later told me a chilling story. For about 2 weeks, residents complained that the water tasted strange. Engineers inspected the system and found nothing wrong. Eventually, a body floated to the surface of the tank. It had sunk unnoticed at the bottom for nearly 2 weeks. The bad taste came from the decomposing body. Was there any connection to cancer? Absolutely. My friend's father, a senior engineer at the refinery, was diagnosed with esophageal cancer at the age of 49 and died 3 years later. 2 of my friend's closest friends also lost their fathers several years later, both from cancer, both in their mid-50s or early 60s. All of them had worked in the central areas of the refinery. 10 years later, when I was working as a postdoctoral researcher in a medical center in US, my intuition about pollution and cancer was reinforced once again. Several technicians I personally knew died of cancer in their 50s or early 60s. Their daily work involved constant exposure to high concentrations of carcinogenic chemicals, such as formalin, formaldehyde, benzene, ethidium bromide, acrylamide, and xylene, as well as radioactive isotopes including phosphorus, 32, and iodine, 131. Even with personal protective equipment, the cumulative exposure was simply too much. That's it for today. In the next video, we'll talk about how cancer develops, with a little bit of cell and molecular biology mixed in. But don't worry, I'll keep it simple. Thanks for watching. See you soon!